Okay. Hello, are you there? Are you good to go? Lunch, the call. Okay. Yay. Okay, how many people we have here? We have 15, excluding me and Ben, so we have 12. And half. No, who always, there's always one person who said no, at least. Okay. Uh, Most of people are ready. So let's talk about the theory first here. Today we will learn about, we learned a little bit of Node.js yesterday, right? But that is not a web server yet. It's just a simple command line app. So today we will learn Express. So that Express will help us to create a web server. And if Node.js, actually Node.js can create a web server for you. You don't need to use any framework, external framework to help you with that. But there's a reason why we need to use Express. Not really need to use, but we use Express. The first reason is that to create a web server using the original Node.js is very painful. Like there are a lot of things that you need to handle, a lot of just the server logic that you need to handle. For example, you need to write code just to read the data from the request, right? Or even before that, you need to start the server. You need to write a bunch of code to just start the server. Not even like listen to any request at all. Just start the server, take a lot of time if you want to write your own code. And that's why we use some tool that will help us to create a web server out of the box. And yeah, you want to focus on your application logic, not just writing a bunch of boilerplate, right? And framework also help us to do all the heavy lifting, kind of like right. Also helps you to follow a very good practice that so many developers out there are using. So instead of writing your own code in your own way, you can use a framework so that you can follow the trend, or you can follow the ground, or you can follow the public. A better practice rather than writing your own code in your own way. So it's good. It's good for beginner to follow a specific framework so that we can learn the syntax, we can learn the logic, we can learn the practice that a lot of people are following. So then you may ask, what is Express? Well, as I said earlier, Express, or you can say Express.js, is just a framework. And a framework is kind of like a bunch of function, tools, and rules that you have to follow. But it will help you to build a whole application with ease. Okay. And a framework is kind of like different from a library. A framework, a library will be like kind of like a standalone, more like a standalone package. And it's very hard to use it on other packages. But a framework, you can integrate with other libraries or other frameworks. That's what makes a framework different from a normal library. And there are actually a bunch of different frameworks that will help you to build applications, web application. But we decided to go with Express because Express is very minimal. It's very basic. So let's go to express.js.com. Wait, what is it? So getting started, it's very easy to use. To just you can install Express and then use it, or you can even use a generator for Express as well. And the doc is very clear, and it's very simple out of the box that actually other frameworks are built based on Express itself, right? So a framework is similar to an API. The term API is very broad, but it's not a web server API. It could be any. For example, if you want to use a function from a library, you can call it an API as well. But any way that you can use from the resource, that's called API. And a framework is very similar to API, and library is also API, but frameworks more than just a library. It can integrate with other tools with ease. Okay. And if you use a regular library, and if you want to integrate it with another library, most of the time it will break, or there will be something that there will be conflicts between inside the two libraries, for example. Framework is different. This is built with the mindset of working with other libraries. And there's a couple of companies. Actually, there's a lot of companies using Express. Here, you just click on the link here. These are the big companies. Here you go. Bunch of them. They don't use Express for all of their application, but for part of it. There's a bunch of different alternatives out there. So you can write your own code in Node.js, right? You don't have to use any framework at all. Or you can use Adonis, which kind of like inspired by PHP. So the syntax and the flow is very similar to the way PHP work. You have core. I don't really know core though, and you have sales. Sales is very it's kind of like it's not as minimal as Express. It's actually sales built based on Express, and there's more rules or more practice that you have to follow comparing to Express. So using Express, you are more like flexible. You can change your code, but in sales, you have to follow the rules. It's very hard to change stuff in sales, right? And you can Google or do some research on competitors for Express. And Express by far the most popular, right? It's it's kind of like one of the first framework out there for web server using Node.js for Node.js. Other frameworks are based on Express. You have the very basic feature out of the box. You don't have to, if you want to use more feature, just add them into Express by using a kind of like a middleware, which we will learn later. It's flexible because it's so simple, minimal, that you can add more library if you want. Right, that's about Express. And if you want to read more, or if you have time, you can go to Express and take a look at the API reference. So right now we are going to use Express for point something. You have a lot of different methods, which if you want to dive deep into Express, you can take a look at those. So in this call, we introduce the basic method or the basic API that will allow you to work to build a web server. If you want to get more advanced, you need to read the docs here, always. Okay. So that's it about the tool that we're going to use today, which is Express. So as I said earlier, Express actually encourages you to use a common practice or a very good practice, which is kind of like VAC. What's VAC? I remember back in Steam, you get banned for that. Yeah, back banned. Okay. All right. I don't know back. What do you mean back? All right. So M.V.C is a design pattern. M.V.C is M stands for models, V stands for views, and C stands for controller. This design pattern is very important and is widely used. And you need to understand this today. So the idea behind any design pattern or M.V.C design pattern is that you will separate the logic or the files or the kind of like functions into three parts, right? Two sections: the model, views, and controllers. So each part will do different things. So here's the flow, kind of like a flow of M.V.C. So you have view, model, controller, model, view, controller. So view, we already learned view. View is just a UI or a front end. So we already learned React, right? So React is a view. What it does is just receive the data and render the data. Sometimes it will interact with the user and collect all the data from the user, send it to our controller here. So basically, view is just a front end. So stuff, show the UI, and then it collect data from user, send it back to the server. Okay, and the server will be comprised of controller and models. Controllers and model. So controllers and model most of the time will be your server. View will be your front end. Okay. So let's talk about controller and models here. All right. Actually, let's talk more about it here first. Controller model is kind of like so as I said yesterday, right? Yeah. So you have a database, right? Database model kind of like something or some code or some library, some logic that allow you to work with the database using JavaScript or code or Python code or Ruby code. They're called model. Basically, you want to read the data from the database, save the data to the database. All of those things, you will have to write code to do that for you. And model will help you with that. So all of these code will be called by model, called models. And controller is something in between the view and the model. For example, a user go to your website, which is your view, and then issue a request to say, okay, send me a list of blogs or a list of posts. And then the controller will listen to that request and decide whether that user is allowed to see the blogs or not, right? If that user is allowed, it will send a request to model, and then model will get all the data related to those blogs and then send back to controller. And then controller here will return the response to the views, to your front end, to your React app, and then your React app will just render it. Okay. So in the last 6 weeks, you only learn about view. Now, from today, we will learn about controller and model. And to understand it a little bit more, let's take a look at the assignment yesterday, right? Your to-do app. Okay, your model. Can you guess in this to-do app, which part is your model? Where's the code? Sorry, let me open the code again. Okay. So for example, in this, so in this code, can you answer which part of this is the model? Anyone? Which function? Yes, load and save data is the model. And what is your database? So right now, our database is very simple. It's the db.json or data.json, right? We don't have a whole system for database yet. So right now, we have these two functions to allow us to get the data from the database and to save the data to the database, right? So these are the functions inside our model. We don't have a proper model right now, but these two functions will be out inside our model. So which one is controller? Controller, Json. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah. So the whole Yax commands list here is the controllers. So we have a lot of different controller, smaller controller, right? So we have add, we have list, we have delete, we have a bunch of, we also have testing or toggle. So they are all controllers. And the add controllers will have smaller, we have a function, right? And this function decided whether or not we are pushing a new data or what do we want to push into our database, right? So controller control most of the logic of our website or our application. The model is just to manipulate the data. That's it. Controller control a lot of our application logic, whether or not we perform the action or another action, right? So actually, we learn a little bit of M.V.C pattern here, but it's not so clear. It's not separated at all. So, so starting from today, we will learn more about M.V.C. And let me end this. Paul is still here. Okay. Okay. So let's talk more about models. We don't learn it yet today or this week. We will learn model next week. But it's good to know what models is. They are just objects. They are objects. You can call them class, which I show you on Tuesday, right? Class, they are class, and they allow us to work with the database by having a bunch of methods or static method, right? So that's why I introduced you the OOP concept. They allow us to work with database by these operation. You will see this term a lot: create, create, update, read, update, and delete. So basically, we have these four basic functions. Okay. So that's all about models. Very simple. And views, well, you know about view already. Actually, view is a to render the UI. So what the user will see in the end, or how user will interact with our applications. And so it's normally the view will be decoupled from your application code, which means you can have it as a standalone package or standalone app. And that's what we're gonna do in this course. So we're gonna build a RESTful API server and a standalone front-end app, which is our React app. Right? So controllers, as I said before, controller is a kind of like a middleware, a middleman that will connect the view and the model. So it will decide all of the logics in the app. And today we will learn about controller. So this is O. This kind of like from the last class, we talk about view engine, which is handlebars, which is kind of like a server side front end. React is a client side front end. So if you want to know more about the view engine, you can go to this URL here, to this link here, and read more on this. Also, the lab in the learning portal also have the old content on how to use the view engine handlebars. If you're interested in it, you can go and try it. But today we're going to use another view engine, which is our React app. Right. Here we go. This is a link on Discord. We're going to use this link, this content today. Okay. Do we have anything else? So this is all. Our main focus today is also very similar. We learn about controllers. We're not going to learn handlebars. That makes people confused. Even though it's good to know, but it's confused you guys right now. So you have two options. You can explore on this, or you can do additional research on handlebars later on after you finish the React. And you expect to encounter a lot of errors today. Yeah, this was when we didn't use Express generator. We started from scratch, from nothing at all. And then we start to build a Express app. But this time we're going to use Express generator. It will generate a bunch of boilerplates for you. You don't have to worry about those things. But we will talk about each function in the when we run the for example the Express generator here. So getting started, and there's something called Express generator. You can just Google it, Express generator. Here we go. You have a bunch of guidelines here. Okay. So more about handlebar if you can read on it by yourself. Handlebar is just in short, it's just kind of like a HTML with dynamic content. So you can use variable inside HTML. It's very similar to how you work with JavaScript and HTML in week 2 or 3, right? Very similar. So handlebar will have something like this. You don't have to use $sign at all. You can use a whole template file, a whole HTML file, and then you can add variable into that HTML files. Yeah, so we don't have anything to do with handlebar today. Okay, that's a lot of information. Do you have any questions? So what we learned today is, let me see, so we will learn how to use Express with a generator. So this generator will save you a lot of time. And then we will learn how to connect front-end React with backend. Right. So, and we also learned for our project today, we learned how to call APIs server side. Right, you will call API on the server side. There will be one challenge question today, which is Can you guess? Here's a question for the day. So at the end of the day, I will ask you the question, and can you try to answer that? Okay. Or if you can guess, you can answer now if you want. Yeah, you can call API on the front end as well as the back end, but there are many cases that you will call API on the backend side. And guess why is that? Okay, any question, guys? Don't fall asleep. How do you have any questions? Yeah, I know. I'm pretty fast. God, I need to give you guys some time to think. Any question? I'm gonna build a poll for questions. Do you have questions? Yes. No. Good. Hang on. Let me think. Okay. Wow. Let me check. Yeah, I have. Yeah, a couple of people did that, but I don't really know how to do that though. I have never tried, but I will try it next time. Oh, handlebars. We're not going to use handlebar today, but I think it's good to know because if you go to work, some company actually use a very traditional way to handle the UI or the view. For example, in Flash, they would use Ginger, Python Flash, another backend language and framework. They would use Ginger. In Express, Node.js and Express, they would use handlebars, Park, and EGS. Okay, so these trees are the view engines which have like the front end. They are the server side front end. Server side front end. And there's client side front end. You don't need to know too much about these, but there's a couple of differences between server side front end and client side front end. Yeah. So today we're gonna use React, which is a client side front end, so that people don't get confused. Okay, because using EGS or handlebar or pucks require new syntax, right? So handlebars, puck. So it's actually, there are a couple of new syntax. Here we go. Where's there's the language guys? Oh my God, it's very similar to HTML, CSS, HTML, but there's a little bit of difference. So if you're interested in learning this kind of view engine, you can. So if you want me to write from the level of simplicity, I would say handlebar is the easiest to learn. Then EGS, and then Puck. Puck is very It's more complicated than handlebars. Yeah, React, Vue, and Angular actually client side for it. And handlebar is more like HTML and CSS, but you can use variable inside that. And that's actually how people in old days use handle differently. There are pros and cons for server-side rendering and client-side rendering. Yeah, yeah, almost like JSX. Correct. So handlebar is very popular. Okay, let me scroll up and check the questions. Tuấn Phan is thinking of a question. If you can, I think you should learn at least one of them. Yeah. So, for example, talking about my experience in this course, usually students will complain, why do we have to learn handlebars if we're not going to use it at all in our final application, in final project, right? But if you think more far ahead, if you go to work and you have no idea what it is, right? You have no idea how to use it, then you have to learn again, and it will cost the employer a couple of bucks, and you don't know whether or not you're going to use it in the future. And learning handlebars doesn't take much time. It's about like a couple of days, and you also understand how it works on the server side. But I don't think handlebar is not in the scope of this course anymore. We're gonna use we build a main stack app. Okay. But if you have time, I would recommend to try handlebars or pub. Okay, there are 6 people saying, hang on, let me think. Okay, time's up. Can you ask the questions? Oh, if you take a look at here, there's a bunch of issues in pub. The syntax for pub is very confusing. Okay, back to my questions. Is it better to do API in backend because it's better for securities? Right. This question is supposed to be debatable. Depends. It really depends on the situation, the case. For example, let me use API to pass over the data. So I guess that would be more if immediately instead of sign up running. Yes, correct. So there are many cases that we want to call API on the server side. Why? First thing, there are at least 3 reasons, 2 or 3 reasons I can think of right now. Because first thing, you can validate the process. You can validate the process. You can validate the results, right? So, for example, if you want to let's say uploading an image, you can do it on the front end, and then you send the image URL to the backend side, or you can send the whole file to the backend side, and then backend side will upload the image somewhere else and then get back the URL. So which way do you think is more reliable? It should be the other ways around. It depends. So back to that question, my question earlier, it depends. Yes, it's more reliable if you send the file to backend and then backend will upload it somewhere else and get back the results and save that URL to database, right? But there's a con here. So if we have 1,000 users or 1,000,000 users, they all send their avatar, their images, their files to the server, it's gonna slow down, put a lot of stress on the server side, right? So the server had to handle a lot of things. And in productions for big app, they don't actually let the server side handle those tasks, right? So they usually let the front end to have some kind of like library that will upload the images out there to somewhere, for example, Cloudinary or AWS or S3, or okay, and then front end will send the URL only to the backend, so that the uploading task will be handled by the front end, and the front end is actually the client or the user computer, not the server. So it will share the loads for the user, for the server. But using, if you want more secured, if you worry about the security, you should let the server to handle that task, right? For example, if you want, let's say, for example, this is what we're gonna do next in the lab. So for example, if you want to get the weather information based on a certain locations, using a certain locations, then you have in some APIs, you will have for some public key and secret key. For example, let's take GitHub issue, for example. GitHub issue, you have public ID and secret key. On the front end, if you use secret key on the front end, it will be exposed to the user, right? They can just open the network tab here and they can just look at the request here. They will see your keys. You cannot hide anything on the server side. Sorry, on the client side. So to hide those credentials or those sensitive information, you're gonna use the backend API, calling the API on the backend side. So on the backend side, the user will not see anything. They cannot see any requests going on behind the scenes at all. And it's more about security and reliabilities. So is it depending on the certain task we would rather choose for an event? Yes, exactly. Depends. Really depends. So the front end, when we talk about the front end, actually front end means the code, everything is executed by the browser, right? By the browser here. And because the browser is a software on a user, like a computer, right? For example, here I'm using Chrome. So my browser will show everything, resource, network, cursor log, everything. You cannot hide anything here. Even though you put it in the env file, right? But env file is not to hide data. Just a global variable that you can change anytime you want. It's not to hide information. Remember that. Okay. So that's why we decided to, it could be still integrated, right? Yeah, to some extent, not all, but to some extent. Even though you use a, it's not really fully integrated though. For example, here, it's really integrated, but sometimes not. Okay. You can see the request payload, which means the data. You can see a response. Response here is just okay, nobody. This is encrypted to some extent, but it's still exposed. For example, your key could be exposed For example, this key, this is going to be a key, and it's exposed to the user. Okay. Remember, if you, for example, if you take a look at the URL here I have in my lab. So you're gonna fetch API, and you also have to provide your API key, right? If you use this on the front end, the user, for example, the user, they have bad intention, they will use your API key to call this API, their own APIs, using your own key, your key, right? And if this website charge money for the usage, you're gonna pay a lot. Right. Any other questions? Boom, boom. If we don't have question, let's take a little break before we start the lab. So we're gonna take a break earlier today and start the lab. And there's a reason for that. I want you guys to prepare the React app by yourself, okay? So you're gonna do this milestone by yourself. I will do it again during the demo, but I expect you guys to be able to do this by yourself already. So basically we have a front end app, which is our React app that have at least 2 routes. The root route or the home route, and another route for showing the weather at a certain city, okay? And so basically it's gonna be like this. I don't really have the demo for that, but it should be similar to this one. Right. So this is the weather at the current location, which is Code School. So if you want to go to Hanoi, so it will take you to, for example, Hanoi here, right? And so here's the weather in Hanoi right now. It's raining. So you need at least 2 routes. Okay. So during the break, can you create your new React app and preparing import and write some code that to render these 2 routes first, okay, to set time. And here's the requirements today. So let's talk about our application first before we actually take a break. Yeah, what is it? No, right now just preparing the code. You don't need to render anything, any data. Just assume. You don't have to assume anyway. Just prepare the layout first. Okay. So for the you need a form in order to collect the input, the city input. Okay. So here's the whole app. The main purpose of this app is that to fetch the weather forecast for a certain place. For example, in Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh or in San Francisco, using the Open Weather Map API, which you already used earlier. Originally, we was using another API server, API service, but that service now it's got purchased by Apple, and they close it. They make it private. It's not public anymore. So we changed to go back to Open Weather Map. So to get a weather in this place, we will use geo coordinates. But what are they? So coordinates comprise of longitude, right, and latitude, right? So comprise of longitude and latitude. So we will use the two coordinates to get the weather information. Okay, And to have this longitude and latitude, we're gonna call another API, which is Mapbox here. And using Mapbox, we can send a place, for example, here. I'm gonna take this for example. So we can send the place here, for example, Ho Chi Minh. So this API will return the coordinates first. And then based on that coordinate, we're gonna use a call on the API here with longitude and latitude to get the weather and forecast, okay? And to use these two API service, you need to create accounts. So I assume that you already have the Open Weather account, right? What you need to do now during the break is register an account on Mapbox. Maybe you're gonna need, you're gonna use it in the future. I don't know. It's very useful. It's a good service. Mapbox. It's free. You don't need to provide any credit card information to register. Cool. So during break, first thing first, register account and Mapbox, right? Number two, prepare your React app, see your front end with 2 routes in milestone 3. Is it doable? Could you any question before we take a break? Again, I'm gonna use the part again. Yay, free lunch. No, good, no, good, no, good. Hang on, let me think. Oh my God. Okay, who has that question? Can you ask? Okay. For this project, it's very small. You don't need to use Redux or anything inside your React app. Just use React Router. That's it. Okay. You don't need to use Redux. It's too much. It's overkill. Okay, I have one person want to ask question here. What do you want to ask? Nice. Cipher lottery. Yay. Wait, you have a lottery website? A lotto website? Okay, so if you have no question, let's take a break and come back at 1:30. During the break, please do the 2 things that I gave you. Register an account at Mapbox and prepare your React app. Okay. Bye. I'm gonna end poll. See results. Yes, now I'm good. Okay. See you guys. Sorry, close.